Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up.
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
Where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands
upcoming tours,
and show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Getting Deep with Eric McFadden.
So, you kind of just mentioned a scenario that we hear about a lot, which is, that somewhat kind of rotating set of players, and that's such a common thing, and you get to really experience all that those people bring to the table. But I'm kind of curious, in your opinion, what things do you have to take into consideration? Let's say you're going out on tour, you're booking some gigs,
Mhm.
you might have different people involved. Like, does that change how you approach the music, or is the music the same and people
Well,
come in and lend their own voice to it?
well, I think because whoever comes in will be lending their own voice and their own interpretation, it is going to change it somewhat.
Mhm.
We don't even have to try to change it; they're going to change it anyway, right? So we just kind of roll with whatever they're bringing to it, and they add their flavor to it. It's you want. There's some people better suited to the music than others. You just and then that's not necessarily that doesn't have to do with talent or skill necessarily. It's just a stylistic thing or an approach, right? Or just sensibility. So some drummers, regardless of how great they may be, may not be well suited to this project. Um, so that's a consideration. Also, of course, is as important as their abilities and their talent is the attitude. So we just like to have, we want to make sure that people that are kind and respectful and thoughtful and that you can hang out with and have a good time with. That's important and professional. Consider the other people you're on tour with. Don't steal shit from the other band's dressing room and, stuff like that. You know, uh,
Has that been a problem?
Like, why do I feel like there's a story there?
oh, yeah, there's probably a few, but, many in the past, I'll say. But I might have even been one of the culprits there. But at one point,
Right, that beer looked cold.
We're gonna say it's tempting.
yeah,
Does,
yeah,
does it affect your set list choices when you have a keyboard versus when you don't, or what the band you're working with that night is?
It doesn't seem to be affecting it. No, I think because I think the songs work either way. I think it's just a different, it's just a different, feels a little different with the keyboards, just adds a different element, which is great. But these songs work without them as well. So we're fine. We're fine in these situations where we have to just pare it down, which sometimes is an economical decision because, touring these days, it's always been very expensive. Now it seems to be particularly expensive,
Mhm.
between the transportation and lodging and all
Right.
the other variables.
Did,
But
did you have you? There's a band called the Bobby Lees. We did a story about it on
yeah,
our
yeah, I like the
episode,
Bobby Lees.
Yeah, yeah.
and they're breaking
Yeah,
up because they said they just can't make money. There's no point in doing it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a sad thing to hear because the Bobby Lees is such a cool band. They're doing a cool, and they deserve to be out there playing music and being heard. But it really is almost prohibitive how expensive it is to tour. If it was not for the generosity or the kindness of people, we couldn't do it. I mean, if our friend John Nichols is out here, he's a wonderful. He's involved in music and he's an old friend, and he's tour managing for us and driving and helping with merchandise. And that alone is tremendous. We have people who've donated Airbnbs to us on the road, for example. There's Joby and Buena Vista West Records, making that album for us. I mean, making records is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so it's without the help of and the generosity and kindness of people, I don't think anybody can tour. I mean, most people are just really, most musicians are really struggling until they get to a certain point, and it's you know even with a good, pretty solid fan base, and it's very hard to sustain yourself out here.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. I'd like to maybe take what you just said just another step further, because you've recorded with and you mentioned playing with a bunch of folks who are either considered part of the jam band scene, or we would say jam band adjacent. Samantha Fish would
Mhm,
probably fall into that category, kind of gets picked up
mhm.
on festivals, Um, from your experiences, you mentioned the Warfield. Um, what is your take on the scene, if anything? Because we talk with a lot of folks who kind of get put into that bucket one way or another, and maybe they didn't ask for it. So it's
Right,
always
right.
kind of interesting.
You know what? I appreciate that question because I was one of those people that when I first started getting lumped into that bucket or put into that bucket, did not identify with that at all, nor did I even understand what that was or meant for that matter. I didn't even know. I'm like, what's jam? You know, and it was kind of through, becoming friends with Dave Schools that happened.
Mhm.
Um, I discovered Widespread Panic. I'm neighbors, and I meet all these people from Blues Traveler and all these people from, the Dead crew. I started hanging out with O'Teal Burbage and Allman Brothers. I just kind of got turned. I'd met Warren Haynes in the
Yeah.
first year of Government Mule, and so I was starting to integrate into that without realizing it. I think it's now more expansive in its definition. I think now, like you were saying, a lot of people are jam band adjacent or just sort of lumped in there. Like Les Claypool, he was embraced by that early on, but he comes from a very different world than that, right? And so I
Mhm.
feel like now it sort of encompasses mostly people that just really appreciate like real music lovers that are there for the music as opposed to like for the pop, just looking for the latest pop sensation, right? But um, like my music is never. I mean, I guess if you think of jam bands as people that are improvisational or kind of in that regard, like say they stretch things out and it's never the same from night to night. Well, then there's a lot of people that you would have considered to be a jam band or would be jam bands, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, Led Zeppelin, they did that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, they would experiment and improvise.
Was Miles Davis' first quintet the original jam band?
Yeah, right. Like that I was just gonna say,
Oh,
it's a great example. Miles Davis. What about Bitches Brew? I mean, what's that stuff? That's
yeah.
it's all jam band if you look at it, if you define it like that, right?
Mhm.
So who knows what that even means? But whatever the case, Samantha Fish is not jam band.
Mhm.
She's a rock and roll blues, whatever Americana. She's just a well-rounded, great artist who can sing her and play her ass off and write some rockin' stuff, and definitely not jam band, but embraced by that as well. Like I
Mhm.
think even some of the what you consider the blues and jam band crowd have crossed over a lot, right? Uh,
Mhm.
there's the almond. I don't know. It's really kind of blurred lines these days with that, right?
I
Yep.
like that how you described it though, and I've never really thought about it this way. But there's a layer there that might be one of the most important pieces of that kind of distinction, and it's people who love live music who really appreciate the art of
Yeah.
watching someone get on stage and with their craft, do something incredible, and want to see that as much as possible. And that to me is probably one of the best ways to think about it, honestly.
I think it's the only way I can personally
Hmm.
define it because it's so diverse when you look at the bands that are kind of put in that category, right? And I think it's like if you're a band that goes out and does your 45-minute set exactly the same way every night, you're probably not going to fall into that category, right? There has to be some exploration or improvisation involved, right? Probably to be um,
Hmm.
considered a jam band per se or what have you. But there's so much diversity in that scene that we call jam. It's really runs the gamut. I mean, there's a lot of those bands are more on the jazz side, more on the blues side, more on the funk side, more on the rock and roll side, more on the who knows? It's just it's
We
all
want
over.
to see you. We want to see you take a chance.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
really it. Not don't play it safe all the time. I think that's I like to see that. I don't want to see people just playing it safe all the time. Just going through the motions. That's not exciting.
No.
For some
So
people,
you're
it is. I guess I should speak for myself because some people love that.
Well, I saw Soccer Mommy a couple years back at a little bar in Baltimore, and I loved it. But I know she did the same 50 minutes the next night, probably did the same banner in between songs. But I was
Sure.
seeing her once, and
Yeah.
I got everything I wanted out of it.
Yeah, right. I mean, the thing is also different if you're seeing it once. I guess, it's if you're following, people follow bands, right? And if you're following that band, you're expecting they're going to do something different every night. I think that's part of the appeal of following a band around, right?
Mhm.
But if there's
Back
certain bands where people don't do that, they don't follow them because they're going to see the same show every night. Right?
Yeah.
back in the 80s, ZZ Top played the Capitol Center 4 nights in a row.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was big into the Grateful Dead, so I went and saw ZZ Top 2 nights in a row, figuring I'd get different set list. Nope.
Nope.
Not quite. Well,
Yep.
and like not only that, but also there's this interplay. It may be indirect. Sometimes it's more directly connected, where we're paying attention and we're, I hate to say keeping track because that's not really what it is, but we're noticing those things and appreciating them.
We're
And
keeping track.
Sure.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Keeping
And in
track.
some cases, yeah, calling out, but that that kind of connection, however we'd want to think about it, to me is also really always been fascinating. I mean, going back however many decades I've been, seeing music in the scene, and
Hmm.
um, I haven't really seen anything quite like that, for better or worse. But it's because of that love, that you almost feel like you're a part of it in some way.
Yeah, and that's a very strong appeal because everyone in some capacity wants to feel like they're a part of something, and you're
Yeah.
experiencing something special or magnificent with other people. Everything's better with other people, really. Even those who may deny it, know it to be true somewhere inside of them. And music is the greatest uniting force of all. I think it's the most transcendent thing. It's the thing that more successfully has brought people together than any other thing in the world. I mean, as far as I can tell. Frank Zappa had a great quote, in response to some of you remember when the whole Tipper Gore and the whole censorship thing was happening, and then the
Yep.
whole satanic panic, and oh, this heavy metal music is making our children commit suicide or worship Satan or whatever that absurdity was. Well, it's like Frank Zappa said that, well, if a song could make you do something, then we would all just be loving each other. Because honestly, there's way more music about
Right.
that, about peace and love and that kind of thing than there is about, killing your mom with a machete. It's not like that's not. So if that were actually true, how come there's not more love in the world, right? That isn't. So that theory is debunked. That this music is making our kids do horrific things. And
And there's so many songs about trains. My God, we'd have trains everywhere.
yeah, right. If that theory if that's yeah,
That's
come
awesome.
on.
Well, so let's switch gears a little bit, and then we'll get into your new EP and some other stuff. When you and Kate go out, it's just the two of you. Is it all songs pulled from the Sergeant Splendor, or is it your solo stuff too incorporated?
Well, we like to keep some separation there because since Kate and I have our own catalogs of music from our solo endeavors, that we want there to be some distinction. So Sergeant Splendor stuff is best represented with a full band, although it's possible you can do a acoustic duo Sergeant Splendor night. But typically we will just call it Kate Vargas and Eric McFadden and just draw from all of our stuff. We might throw a couple of Sergeant Splendor songs, but it will be like songs from Kate's albums and my albums. And of course, there's far more material to choose from doing that. We have several, several albums between us, whereas there are only two Sergeant Splendor albums right now. However, that's going to change really quickly too. It's going to be, we're collaborating with a wonderful artist and friend of ours, and fantastic Negrito, who, when Kate and I first got together, we of course had naturally asked each other who we were listening to, as musicians often do. And the first thing she said was Fantastic Negrito, who I had met and did a show with. We both played the Bernie Sanders rally in San Francisco. It was a Fishbone, Fantastic Negrito, Dave Matthews, myself. It was quite a spectacle. It was quite a night. I mean, of course, things didn't turn out quite the way we wanted them there, but we So anyway, he's great, and she told me she was into this album, and right away I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. All right, so Fantastic Negrito was the first thing she mentioned, and now we're working with him, which is really cool. And then we're doing some other collaborations. You know, Falcon Greenwell from Tedeschi Trucks has a studio in Atlanta, and we went out and did a song with him, and we're going back in May to do some recording, and he's producing that and playing drums on it, and so we've got a bunch of stuff in the works for the next thing, and what else? I mean, I don't know.
You
Things
have a
are,
new EP coming out just as under your name.
yeah. I have an album of EP that was released. It's this French label called Bad Reputation, and I've been working with them on and off for many years. You know, we just went out to France in July and did some show Germany and France. Kate and I did some shows with Omar Torres in Germany together, the three of us, and then Kate and I went off and did a little run in France, which was great. And the label Bad Reputation, they're the ones who set all that up. So they just put out a 4-song EP of mine, Eric McFadden, Lucky Man, and I guess they're going to put out the full album version. I just finished recording the rest, another 6 songs for that. So that'll come out at some point soon. I think originally we were supposed to go out and tour again this July, but I think that's been postponed. But that album mostly, the first 4 songs, the EP, I recorded at home because it was during lockdown that I started it. And the other 6 that I got out in the world and did it at Lucky Recording and at the Buena Vista West Jam Cave, places like that. But that one I did a lot of. It's just recorded all over the place with a bunch of people. It's like Paulo Baldi's on there, Angeline Saris, Wally Ingram, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction plays on one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I have a question for you, similar to what you were asking us. Are you based in New York or elsewhere?
Yeah, Kate's been in New York for like 12 years, so I moved in with Kate the beginning of 2020. So I've
So you're
been
still
there.
there.
But Kate and I both grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know each other then. We met in Wisconsin, but we both hail from the land of enchantment. And
That's so fantastic where you
Right.
guys grew up and where you met are like opposite ends of the country.
yeah, I know. It's like they are so you couldn't be more different. Wisconsin and New Mexico are very different realities altogether.
That's fantastic. So how do you approach when you write with Kate as opposed to doing stuff when you're solo or other collaborations that you've done without her? Do you approach your songwriting differently?
Are you in the bathroom?
I think we approach it like sort of I'll say this, because both of us initially wrote on our own, right? We didn't collaborate a lot. I know Kate did some collaborating, but not a lot of it. Before we did the Steelbridge Song Fest, and all the festivals that stemmed from there, in the Holiday Music Motel in Sturgeon Bay, right? That was all collaborative stuff. Everybody's writing together, and you learn a lot that way. And it also teaches you how to like leave your ego at the door and just serve the song and not be so attached and married to your own ideas. So it's really great for that. But so by the time we got together, we had both been through that whole thing a lot, kind of learned, what it is to collaborate and work with other people. I was a little intimidated at first writing with her because I respected her songwriting so much that I had a little bit of an inferiority complex when it came to, writing with her. But then we naturally got more comfortable with it, and I was not so inhibited, and I was less afraid of putting out my ideas out there. And it started to go very smoothly. Like I think we write very well together and very easily together. I think we both just we don't have any issue, rejecting each other's ideas, because it doesn't feel like rejection. It's just we're trying to get to some place. We're just we both have the same goal, and we're not attached to things in that way. It's not an ego thing. It's like, how can we get the best possible song out of this? So it's pretty easy. We just sort of you know, a lot of it's very spontaneous. Like when we did that second album, we just got in the studio and started writing, and it just kind of flowed. So sometimes it's a struggle, Kate, you know, with the lyrics because she's very, I mean, very particular when it comes to that and very critical of lyrics, her own and other people's. So, you know, the people that, you know, we both love, and I know she loves her, like Tom Waits, Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, you know, and so when that's your standard, you know, it can take a lot to get to a place where you're satisfied, you know. I I generally give her all the heavy lifting when it comes to the lyrics, you know. She, you know, you know, not to say I don't have a few ideas of my own in there, um, but yeah, it's really fun writing with her though.
Love that. Yeah, we talk at times, and this is something that fascinates me. You know, when do you know something's done? When do you know it's finished? I guess that goes for recording as well as you know, getting the lyrics and the song in place itself. But to me, that seems like it'd be a huge challenge to try to say, okay, we're good. You know, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah, well, you have to figure out that's a good thing to yeah. Well, you know, you've heard of these bands that take 5 years or more to make an album, and they get stuck in the studio and they get stuck in this sort of loop of, well, some people call it being a perfectionist. I think that's a terrible disease, you know, perfectionism, because since there is no such thing ultimately, how do you find perfect? I mean, define perfect. What is perfect? I mean, does that mean to the point where it's completely sterilized and devoid of any mistakes or imperfections or any? I don't know. I guess I don't like music that sounds like that. You know, like if I listen to these old Beatles or Zeppelin albums or whatever, you hear mistakes all over the place. John Paul Jones coming in late on the chorus, or like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Somebody singing a little off pitch, and that's the beauty of it. I don't want to hear music that doesn't sound like it's made by humans. So I don't think striving for perfection is a very noble thing, really. I think, you know, I like the sound of music played by humans, right? You can tell when something has been, you know, Pro Tools to death, or, you know, edited to death, or, you know, auto tuned to death. It doesn't, you know, that's not why we love all the music we love. You know, I mean, maybe now it is because people, I think, ears are growing attuned to music that is sort of
Mm.
homogenized, or sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, devoid of, of imperfection. But in that regard, but that's just how it depends on how you define perfect or imperfect. Also, it's um, I like music that is perfectly human. I think is maybe
I
Nice.
love it.
um, not necessarily perfectly executed, or you know. And also writing wise, you know, you just know when it's done. You're just like, okay, does that say what we want it to say, and did we trim all the fat out of it, and is it
Mhm.
you know, I don't know. You know, it's a very, that's a strangely subjective thing, right? Songwriting. And
I've
I don't know.
always found it fascinating. Gilmour's solo on "Comfortably Numb" is apparently from like 10 different solos that he cut together.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
makes it
that's
listening to a
impressive.
completely different. It makes it listening to a completely different.
That's
That's
impressive on
crazy.
multiple levels.
You know, that's the whole thing. Comping is quite a thing. I mean, look, I've not to say I'm not against comping stuff, vocals and solos and all, but there's a certain point. It's like, well, maybe just try playing it. I mean, I've done that where like two parts of a solo. I'm like, you know what, this half of this half went with this half. That would be pretty awesome. But I mean, at the point, if I have to start comping more than two or three takes, then I think it's just time to play it again. That's just me. I mean, yeah, I like the idea of a just consistent performance, just
Mhm.
hearing a flow in the moment. But I do love that solo. "Comfortably Numb" is a great solo. I gotta hand it to him
It's
there.
fantastic. Speaking of being loose, how did you get hooked up with P Funk and the whole P Funk mob?
Yeah, that was yeah. How did that happen? Oh yeah. Well, in San Francisco, my friend Gina Hall, she just you know a good friend of mine from way back. She would often say to me, "Oh, you've got to meet George. Oh, George needs to hear this or something." and she would be referring to George Clinton. And after about me hearing that for 2 or 3 years, George is coming to play at the Warfield or something, or the Fillmore, and they put together a recording session at Hyde Street Studios to record a song for the theme song for the Gina Hall show. She was going to do an internet show, and so that was the idea. So George comes in with a few other members of P-Funk, Belita Woods, Gary Scheider, Lige, a few people. And then Hat recruits me to come in with a few of my band members, Kevin Carnes and Charles Gasper, and some people from old bands of mine like Alien Lovestock and this and that. So we get in there, and Lonnie Marshall's there. I remember that, and we're just sort of throwing around ideas, basically, like for this theme song, and we're just improvising a lot. But as a session would go with George Clinton, it's really it goes on and on and on, and we're doing all kinds of just getting into the zone, as it were, and it's really quite a. I remember one time he comes in when me and Kevin and Charles were playing, and he just starts screaming and jumping up and down, gypsy funk, because we were doing something that sounded like a cross between Paco de Lucia and James Brown or something, right? And
Wow.
so it was really exciting. So at the end of that session, I mean, that's really my first time meeting George Clinton, was this recording session that went on all through the night, and around 8 or 9 in the morning when we're listening back to the stuff, Matt Kelly's the engineer, and he says, "Oh, wow, yeah, I like this." And he's kind of nodding, and he says, "Who's that? Who played that?" And then somebody would point at me, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, who did that?" And then somebody would point at me. So I think after that, he, for that reason, he ended up calling me like a month later when he came back to town to go into the studio, and then invited me to sit in, with P-Funk. And that just led to me asking him to be on our album, Alien Lovestock album. It then led to me asking him to come out and do our record release with us in San Francisco, which he did. And, we just kind of, became friends through Gina Hall and my friend Ron Cat Spearman, who also joined P-Funk. I just saw Ron Cat in St. Louis night before last. But so it was really, that's how it happened. Gina Hall hooked all that up, and it just organically kind of grew into this sort of kind of relationship. And one day he's just like, get on the bus. Where do I send the checks? And that was that. Yeah. And that was the beginning of a whole other era and profound life experience that really changed the whole trajectory of my life, I guess you could say. Yeah.
So, thinking about all of that, where, in a practical sense, I'm curious, where would be the best place for someone to go to really get an understanding of all that you do and all that you've done?
Wow. Well, I mean, a lot of the music is out there. Most of it's out there. I mean, there's a lot of records to sift through. I guess I have my own personal favorites, the ones I think best represent me, I guess, throughout the years. But obviously, I'm very happy with our Sergeant Splendor albums. These last two. I think I played on a Kate Vargas album, Rum Pum Po. I think that's such a brilliant album. It's one of the greatest things I've gotten to play on. I mean, also the Eric McFadden trio stuff, because I'm really happy with those albums, like Joy of Suffering and Delicate Thing, Diamonds to Coal. That's with James Whiten on the upright bass, who's just a phenomenon. He, Les Claypool used to come see us a lot, and he really loved James. I think that says something about his playing, just that alone, right? And he's one of the greatest upright bass players, I think, of all time, and I think many people would attest to that. So the Eric McFadden trio albums with James are really great, I think. Paulo Baldi is on one of those. We have different drummers on them. The Commander, Jeff Anthony, Jeff Cohen. But anyway, and I think in addition to that, the one I did with Tab Benoit, Pain by Numbers, which has Doug Wimbish on bass from Living Color, and Terrence Higgins on drums. That's a great thing that would be in there somewhere. And maybe Train to Salvation would round it out because it's more, whole different type of thing, more acoustic, accordions and violins and cello, so I don't know. I think if you were going to select a few out of the bunch, I'd probably select those. I think that's I think it would give a fair, well-rounded view.
Representation.
Yeah.
Do you find it do you approach something like your trio differently than walking on stage with a P-Funk? Do you have to think differently about how you're going to be presenting the music?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because in the trio, as a trio, I'm occupying a lot of the space, so it's a very you craft your parts very differently when you're playing with 2 other people as opposed to like 16 other people. And you have to, how do I fit into this equation? It is like and it's a bit like like a bit of a puzzle. I mean, you don't want to step on anybody, right? But you don't, and you want to add something. And with funk, it's there's so many syncopation and counterpoint, and just thinking in those terms. To me, I like to think of it almost as like you would approach a classical music piece. How they're really, there's a lot going on, but the way the parts are all working together, very complementary. Like having a counterpoint melody or cool harmonies in there, or rhythmically having things like polyrhythmic things going on that really are complementary. So it's a different way of thinking, and it's a lot of fun to kind of think about things in such a drastically different way than with a trio. P-Funk was a great education. I mean, it was
Graduate school kind of,
such a legendary institution. Parliament Funkadelic. They are, bigger than life. Yeah. And also I have to mention, the thing was having the distinction of being the first and only mandolin player in P-Funk was kind of cool. It's really how I ended up joining, was that I came into the studio and I had a mandolin with me, and because I was coming from another gig, and George said, what's in that little case there? And I said, that's my mandolin. And I busted it out and I started playing a riff, and he got excited about that little riff. And that ended up being on the album, How Late Do You Have to Be Before You're Absent, right? So then I would end up playing the mandolin at least half the time in the band for the first year, I'd say.
Interesting.
And of course, I had to be going through all kinds of crazy effects at times.
That's cool. There was a band called The Bridge that used to be out of Baltimore, and they had a mandolin player who ran stuff through the effects and also beatboxed, which was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You got anything else there, Amanda? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
My son popped in for a second. No, I mean, I feel like we have covered so much, and I just really, really appreciate you, Eric, for being so open and giving us so much. I just love your work and everything you've done, and really excited to get to talk to you today.
Well, I appreciate that. It was a real pleasure talking to both of you, and thanks for having me on All That Jam.
Check out Sergeant Splendor. I really was digging the show I saw from, I guess, last December, maybe in Illinois somewhere it was.
Yeah, could have been.
And fantastic. I just love the way you and Kate play off each other. It's really something special.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, I love playing with her, so I'm hoping we keep doing it.
Yeah, hopefully you get to that next level. We get you up to that next place where touring is easier, maybe.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll keep doing it until it is. So
right on.
There you go.
If you are enjoying All That Jam, please like and subscribe to our social media channels at All That Jam Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or visit our website, allthatjampod.com. Make sure to sign up for our email list and tune in every week for new episodes.
Also, look for full interviews on our YouTube channel. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long.